说是，我呀，大家好，嘎的嘎的，巴拉嘎的，大家好，嘎的巴拉嘎的，巴拉松嘎的，我的说，大家好，我们嘎的嘎的，巴拉，我的说哈，我老说，但是得了，参天讲，我老说，但是人家。甚至他们这个东西，他们在那马去吧，三界有恐怕是目前现在要拖把下。第一期的200将军300拉战的最新的娘子人给让我来新过来，新过来退过退了，推进熊马路我去过去，俺告诉爸爸的，大家开始节目希望来个什么追究个真的这些提名人员什么钱。
So as normal, we begin by setting our motivation, that motivation to really endeavor to do our very best to attain the peerless state of enlightenment in order to benefit all living beings. And knowing that to attain that state, we must also perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. To perfect those trainings in turn, we must be able to have a good understanding of them, of what to do. And that comes from being able to rely upon a non-mistaken presentation. And so it is with this in mind that we are here this morning to listen to a talk from the text known as the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, as composed by the great Bodhisattva Shantideva. And similarly, we begin also by visualizing the space in front, our own root guru, in fact, but in aspect, the figure of the greatly compassionate and skilled in means, one of Shakyamuni Buddha, who has a one face and two hands, with the right hand in the earth-touching mudra, and the left hand at the meditative equipoise posture, holding an alms bowl filled with nectar. In the nature of clear light, we feel that the Buddha is actually present there. Similarly, we visualize in the space around ourselves all kind mother sentient beings without exception, including, of course, our parents, our relatives, those to whom we are close with, those who are neutral to us, those with whom we have good relations, those with whom we do not have good connection. Nevertheless, we visualize all there without exception. And then again, bringing our attention to the figure in front, we see that the Buddha is marked at the crown by an Om, at the throat by an A, and at the heart center by an Hum. From that Hum at the center, light rays, countless light rays emanate going into the pure realms, inviting the wisdom beings and the empowering deities forth. They come, the wisdom beings dissolve into the central figure, the empowering deities confer empowerment with the nectar of empowerment, which overflows at the crown, from which spontaneously appears the figure of Akshobhya. And again, we bring our mind to kind of really confirm that the Buddha that we are visualizing in front is actually present and is actually the embodiment of all the Buddhas of the three times.
아니 저거 달에 되는 세대가 라마 투배 공부대 구송투 연대 아니 다가 이제 라지바 탐지를 저와 센티바 저 지고를 저와 탑을 저와 콜로 투제 치고 이름에 봐 주바 펜다마다 탐제가 된 저게 어때래 즉 다가 이제 가서 다 심지도 투제 라라라 뭐 봐서 봐서 나랑서도 투제 나랑서도 라라라 나랑서도 뭐 봐서 봐 산지로 이랬다 나랑서도 다시 주배 쳐다 다 그래서 쭉 대받침 받이 다들 임베데 아니 what 저 공부시는 다 간제 아니 둘라세도 또 맞투베 공부 구소도 연대 제시면 그냥 아니 다외다와 이식에 때와 문제가 때발라서 봐 랑게 타고도 아니 막에 심제 탐색이 대다게 아니 동에 나시 받게 동에 수고 나시 받게 하도도 차바 두제가 동에 나시 받라는 미스베 닝제 아니 대다 동에 주대 잡았잖아 치모를 타와 주대 타와 쇼제 삼다 아니 아니 대화 아니 교다 잡아지 아니 대나치 말아 대바 주제 대바 쇼치 왔다 대대 젠누바데 아니 라말에 징글로 딱예 지기 라말에 징글라도 서 왔다 삼을다네 아니 대내 대화 교다 대바 지다 동네 교다 대바 잡아지 예 지기 학습이야 나도 파지가 저도 심제 탐제시나 심제 지가 아니 대화 탐제도 동네 탐제 저와 제마도 왔다 세보라 아니 지마저 다대 젠누베 누바 솔라도서 되나 세드베 아니 딱 또 라마투야 뭐 코나도 아니 공부 공부하지 마도록 타면도 대토바이나 아니 가서라다 심전 남자 감다 매봐 발라녀와 치다와시도 키도 요바자 셴데 베메르도 쪽도 정도도 아니 공부 공부하지 마도록 타면도 두빈 삼사와드네 공부하지 샤
So then we're again looking at the figure in front, really recalling, the kind of qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, these perfected qualities of an enlightened being, how the Buddha has no fear of any suffering with regard to themselves, has skilled in means in removing the suffering of others, is working for all with great compassion and without any bias, and is benefiting all without any expectation of anything back. So these are essential qualities of an enlightened being, and works for the benefit of all sentient beings. For the benefit of all sentient beings, the Buddha generated the mind of enlightenment. For the benefit of all sentient beings, then trained on the path to perfect perfections, etc. And for the benefit of sentient beings, attained a full state of enlightenment. And that means the Buddha did that for us too, for us solely, just to train on this path and to attain that state. And so from this kind of contemplation, we develop the triple faith, pure faith, faith of conviction, and manifest faith. And from then, we again focus on sentient beings all around us and realize here that they are all enmeshed in suffering, whether it's suffering of change, and particularly the pervasive suffering. And knowing that without getting beyond that pervasive suffering, there is no relief from suffering in general. And indeed, there will always be that inducing of the other two types of suffering for sentient beings. And so this brings forth a sense of compassion, really this understanding of how much the people are mired in this suffering. And I really, from that sense of compassion, I have a strong desire to free all sentient beings from that suffering. Wouldn't it be wonderful if they were completely free of suffering and the cause of suffering? May they be free of suffering. May I be the one to bring that about. Oh, Guru Deity, please bless me so that I can make this so. And I really want to kind of look into not just relieving suffering, but the causes of suffering. And on top of that, not just to bring happiness, but the causes of happiness to all sentient beings as well. And I really I will do that. I will be the one to do that. But I quickly realized that, I don't have that capacity. I don't have that insight or any of the other qualities necessary to do that at the moment, even for one sentient being. But who has developed that state? It is the enlightened mind, the Buddha, who has the necessary insight into all the dispositions, personalities of all sentient beings, the karmic load, etc., and is able to precisely kind of prescribe what it is that needs to be done. And that's a very important consideration. So important is really that I realize that I have no choice, but I must attain that state of enlightenment myself. I must attain enlightenment in order to be perfectly beneficial to all sentient beings.
What is compassion under any teacher to dark and judge what the juju to some chat, teacher to in some what the compassion, what the
And therefore, with this motivation in mind, I will now sit and listen to this teaching from the Bodhisattva's way of life.
Well, stuck as something correct. Should you don't go to
The Dunju Dopke,
Dumjet.
Dunju Dopke, and it will get chicky again. Now, Kebar Gendro, Dumiel Jomba.
Order. Takanjaji Tadade Kasore, Takanjaji Takanjaji Chidang Chikasore, Takanjaji Chidang de Sanjay Chuten, Chanju Sebenyamne, Chubanyamne Janet, that Sanjay Chuten, Tatu the Garsara, Tatu Tamachi to Chuba, Sanjay Kumar to be Chituke, Simja Tanja, that you could Minibanya del Tom, Takanja, the Tadu, and the Kasodata, Sisi Nige Chipale Jen, Siwatan, Shiwa Sisi Nige Chipale Jen, and Sanjay Kumar to be Cheto. That the Yuna dinner yana, Tata Kasak Yama Chida, and the chicken, Yaran, the Lord Mashunga, Yaran to get it, and then Yakap, and the chicken, Koya Tungele Tabe, Captain, Ranichi Washi, the Tunic, Loketune, and Takajatic Lokene, and the chicken, Tabasam Tobacena, Tabasa Tobachet, and the Casata, Caseta, Silan Chapshin, Dubai, doing yes to me, doing yes to Jewish singers, what the Casset, Jesuibata, yes. Kasota Kasa Neka Tamji Kimberg to be again, Kasota, Lotto Matangetella, and a chicken Kasota Yarangi Tekbatene, Dichen, what in the ship, what in the ship. That there's a massa, Kever Nandru, that I need to Papa Tabek, the dig lot of Matangetella, and a chicken Kasota, that Gavate, Kever Nandru, doing a Jombanista, and it what in the chicken, and the chicken. That Zata should the Tabataway get what the Dile Zata what in Yazona Kena, Kaja to Marwa. Yet Jamado got a bet to Nangunjo Shushamoyeza, and they jump to the Kevan, Nandru Dunga Jombanisata, Nandru Dunga Jombani, Zawales. Joa Tamja Nandula, Joa Jeve, Chidekis.
And so, obviously, in the course of the Bodhisattva's way of life, it's a book of practice to attain what goal? And the goal is the ultimate goal of attainment of enlightenment, that state of a non-abiding nirvana that has completely freed from both cyclic existence and nirvana itself. And so this is Buddhahood. This is the state of enlightenment. And so it's kind of pointing out just what is necessary in order to be able to do that. So here's pointing out too that, to move beyond the goals of the hearer beings, the hearer practitioners, and the solitary realizer practitioners. And so I'm saying that from their point of view, they have gone beyond the state of suffering, cyclic existence, and attained what they call liberation, but they haven't moved beyond into the state of enlightenment. So here it's kind of saying we have those kind of have freedom from that path of cyclic existence. It's like the state of the mind of enlightenment is like a sheltering tree to kind of relieve one from the suffering of cyclic existence. And saying here, but then also the next verse is talking about the particular purpose of freeing oneself from the lower realms, of overcoming the suffering of the lower realms. And that begins verse number 31, which reads, "It is the universal bridge that leads to freedom from unhappy states of birth."
What did it say? That Nyandule Joachiba Chide Savaya, Semjabati, Semjabati, Latene, and Rang Yandule Montoya. 영화 맞아. 아니 심지어 셔야 아니 지금 다 감도 좀 받잖아. 다 뉴발라 법이야. 다 지금 탐제 잡아 좀 두고는 탐제 잡아. 다 대감도 좀 얻은 거라 아니 내가 그게 딱 가져다 타바점 된는 지야. 다 대야 내가 제마도 그게 다 뉴발라 법이잖아. 아니 냐솔로 맞게 받지. 야 자주 그 생각도 용되게 벌써 what 거야. 셔봐 참.
So here it's saying that this mind of enlightenment, the generation of this mind of enlightenment, is like a bridge that raises one up from and frees one from the possibility of going into the lower realms, for all sentient beings going into the lower realms. And so it's kind of important to understand here that once we generate that mind of enlightenment and live a life genuinely in accordance with that, there is no fear of going to the lower realms. Our ultimate goal, as pointed out, is the state of omniscience, the state of enlightenment. Failing that, we attain the state of liberation from cyclic existence. Failing that, we have a positive rebirth in this in cyclic existence, but we never have to fear of entering into the lower realms.
들어와다 뭐 배는 알아도 찾아 세딜라 중앙이나다 탐제 점바 뚝도 탐제 점바 좀 마도 와이네 타바 뚝도 타바 좀 마도 와이네 녀바도 녀소라 마게 와다 제고 열와 녀바도 녀소라 마게지 제고 열에 다 된데 임바이사 최죽다 마죽 참 샤사데 아니 원도네 샤과 들와 원도네 아니 원도 고마 두야 탑람 지기도나 오다 미디 다 최죽도 냠년 지기도 스게치 루아 다 되네 타바 죽은지나 아다 인다메 다 탐제 줘봐 죽나다 셰 먹어 버려다 다 죽고에도 탐제 줘버려 다 알레 탐제 줘봐 줘봐도네 타바 죽게 알레 타바지 줘봐도 봐네 치마 냐솔로 마게 봐지 제부터에다 다 개치슈나네 개치슈 차대요 봐 되네 인자 뭐저 가서데 쳇딜라시나 줘봐 메스기도 와다 줘봐 쓰는데 아니 참 치마 핀젤라 아니 펴봐 죽게 고고도 와 다 딜라데는 아니 초바상류서 다 초바 삐당류데 탐제 잡아 줘봐 삐당 슈 엔디 제마데 타바 주베 디 제마데 다 냐솔로 마게 버잖아 다 뭐도 고바시 주베 어디를 샤고다 다 람림라 어디를 다 되네 다가는 지금 배나 덤베 창을 차셔나 무니 마무니 수거다 무니스 무니 당보디 다 무니스다 지다 르부체다 짜침보를 쓰고요 봐 다 단단다 짜침보도 가르스나 이제 세딜레 아니 원도 공부하다 짜침보 쓰게들 무니샤 무니 니바들라 아니 딜레 아니 개쳐와다 타바투베들 무니 니바디샤 딜레 무니 또 짜쳐 노부 짜차트 다 탐제 점바 주고 다 무니 치슈티 마무니 쓰게 치슈티 이제 덤베 생각 코라네 아니 고 지가서도 탐제 점바 주베게다 람거리 맛이 떼는 것도 와
So it's really pointing to the possibilities, really, if we have met the path and engage with the path, even in this life. The possibility of attaining enlightenment itself, full and complete enlightenment. The possibility of, if we fail in that purpose, in that goal, we can attain the state of liberation from cyclic existence. And the possibility, if failing that, is that we must at all costs avoid any rebirth in the lower realms. So it's kind of really important that when we talk about what counts as spiritual practice or not spiritual practice is determined by whether we at least maintain a higher rebirth, kind of like that course of action, that course in our Dharma career, that we can attain a higher rebirth. Failing, and and if we can get beyond that, we can attain the state of liberation. Then no need to mention how wonderful a result the state of enlightenment would be following that. And so it's kind of like really understanding what is most important. And that, so for when we talk about having no attachment to this life, we know that we are focused on the minimum of attaining a good quality life in future rebirths, a higher rebirth into the future. And this is how it's laid out in the graduated path to enlightenment also, where it's also explaining the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha, O Muni, Muni, Maha Muni Soha. And so that first Muni refers to something that is, of course, very highly valued, very precious. And it infers the attainment of a positive rebirth, that we have avoided, again, the lower rebirths. And the second Muni refers to having attained the second goal of attaining liberation from cyclic existence. And of course, Mahamuni, a great Muni, it refers to the Bodhisattva path, where one is able to attain enlightenment. So this is showing how the very name, the mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha itself, is demonstrating the stages of the path.
我的这个sem界了电的用过多啊，sem界了电的用这个多啊，我的sem界了电的用这个有的，大概这个告诉的就告诉了，大概这个告诉的我这个làm，大概那些个这个年人个làm，大概那听把前面làm，这个sem界了用这个sem界了电的用这个多，他的sem界个培育这个多，真的意思，本来恰恰吧伊呢，本来恰恰吧伊呢。semje de ninje la tene ikege to ninje semje ikege to semje la tene sangye chage to semje la tene sangye chage to sangye la tene nyerang yogu to sangye ge chete bala tene nyerang ge ta nyerang lamdi yogu to nyerang lamdi ge yogu to ani daga ni shige ani ngonto ge lamdi ge yogu to ta ma amade da ge chechete da semje chate to semje 차트도 다 semje 돼야 자와 닝지라 두고도 다 닝제의 개치주 차트기도 와 진짜 닝제의 토다 바송의 개치 뭐 있어 토마 람라 슈예 아니 바도 아가서 람라 라비에 탕고 바저와 산 게네 sem제가 된저 그러니까 닝제가 오고 용어 되기도 와 닝제가 오고 용어 되기도 와 근데 이번에서 아가서 다다데 반대 다와 잡박이 단다데 우마주가 제베 갑라 아니 제주 취주 다 초바제다 된줄로 빠져 모여 쳐도 초바제데 먼저 초바자 사게 자주 선바다 되는 방법이 열다 이내 닝질로 되바지기도 닝질로 되바지기도 다 닝질도 다 개치슈나네 개슈 치주 차대바지
So indeed, if we look at it this way, that the mind of enlightenment itself is like the mother of all progress on the path, whether one attains a higher rebirth, whether one attains the goals of the hearer or solitary realizer beings, and of course the state of enlightenment itself. So all of them kind of are due to the generation of the mind of enlightenment. Because the mind of enlightenment is at the heart of everything. And at the heart of the mind of enlightenment is compassion. And so here, compassion is saying is that which gives birth, gives rise to the Buddhas, the hearer, realize they're the one then who teach the path. And it's based on that path that the hearers and solitary realizers can adhere to their goal and attain their goal. And indeed, how we can attain a higher rebirth as well. So all of which comes back to the mother is really the mind of enlightenment, compassion. So here, this is where we kind of like, the entering into the path, the proceeding along the path, progressing along the path, the attainment of the goal is all kind of surrounded by this mind of compassion. The central mind of compassion, which is indeed the main cause of the mind of enlightenment itself. And this is why the Arya Chandakirti, Master Chandakirti, in his entering of the middle way text, begins with the traditional offering. Whereas, it's offering, one can make traditional offerings to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, etc. Here, he did not use that type of offering. He chose to make his offering at the very beginning of his text to compassion itself, as compassion as being like the mother of all attainment on the path.
닝지 용사 거라 요마로 산제를 닝지 깨고야 요마로 어디를
And so, of course, when we emphasize and demonstrate the absolutely importance, quintessential importance of compassion, we are in the same breath having to demonstrate the quintessential importance of sentient beings. Because without sentient beings, there is no compassion. There's no object for our compassion. And so it's kind of so important that then, if there are no sentient beings, there is no generation of compassion. So they must have equal importance, in fact.
어디를 다들 좀 개치 못 찾아도 어디를 정말 점점 가서 상계에서도 뭐저 대박계다 구바지에 준 것도 심제에서도 갑자기 아니 저거 다 삼례야 말아서 레당 뭐 삼로 당당 된대요 심제에서도 구바지에 또 가보지도 가버려 믹스에게는 라다 저와 약보 매견다도 믹스에게다 지금 가서도 지금 동남아제다 야만나딜라 지금 가서도 녀몽이 생각도 배출 동저 용되고 다 되는 것도 삽사치의 쇼게 치모래도 봐 그 심제 로다 동에게 왜 심제 진이 요바데다 탐자라 아니 저 가서 진이 요바다 그래 요바데 데다 탐자 아니 랑게다 닝지기에 장주가 심제겠다 유연하면 해도 봐 이거 봐 자치고 쉬우래도 봐
And so that it's often the case, isn't it, that we need to kind of have faith and respect for the Buddha's attainments and so on. But we can have a kind of ambiguous attitude towards sentient beings, especially as beginners. It's difficult for us to sustain respect for sentient beings, and even for those that we know, like we may not have a good connection with them, so we may just ignore them, or indeed they may serve just for us to generate mental affliction in relation to them. And so it's kind of like very, very important that we understand the key importance of not just the Buddha, but also sentient beings for our capacity to generate compassion and, of course, the mind of enlightenment.
다들 이제 다들 가래 지고 열었으나 샘제 되게 드림하자 말데 얘네 랑게 녀모 온게 지어도 아니 녀모 되게 매바 소마도나 안고 딱다 용도고 뭐 용도보다 되네서 니바다 대유 디바세와 디바세고 요라다 디야 세 니발라 니체라 아니 녀지 세와다 아니 시지 세 니바 호스 니체 워터체
And so therefore, in terms of avoiding the mental afflictions arising in relation to sentient beings, that which sends us to the lower realms, we must deal with that, and that must deal with that at the causal level. And so this then involves the next few verses, where we talk about the ability to eradicate the obscurations. And these are both the obscurations, the deluded obscurations, and the eradicating of the obscurations to omniscience. And so from the second two lines of verse number 31, it speaks about the eradication of the delusive obscurations. It is the dawning moon of the mind that dispels the torment of disturbing conceptions. The second of these points was the eradication of the obscurations to omniscience. The first two lines of verse number 32. It is the great sun that finally removes the misty ignorance of the world.
Ora, da ora da joye Michel Ravita Chijini Macho, that didn't joye Numo Jemain Beasa, Numo Jemain Beshamatati Pachasure, Nyentig Pacha. She did yes, Ravita Chijinda, Sawane Chibesa, Nimachimbu. Auntie, so Taka the Chanjuga Semtila Tene, Taka Toege, because Nyundibi said to it, she did be said to it, Taka Nyundib Mortene, and they come the Tuba channel. Modernita, ma set to it. And she did dear, and to go the Sunday Goma, Tony, Sunday Gomano, Guersi, Castle Takaja, Sunday Goma, Pa Guersi, and a Lampene, Gogu, your mentor, a shame, Guetanke Yomarwa, Gudano, Roa Casa de Tande Casa de Casola Takaja, to me to lay your mare, Yomo to lay your mare, to your mare. Takasana, and that de la Chuni Dambat in the draw dressera. To it to a chag misella, say so and the Chuni that the more you get next to 10, and because no more with Tibakanda the Kigu meeting, more you get next to tea, Jajuga send you couldn't lane, and that couldn't lane, and they come to Tibakana, you must set up cheer. Jajuga send you couldn't lane, they come to Tibetana, and because of the Shedget was set up cheek. They go rata, Range, Jajuga send Kunalana, Sanja Goma to go to Nyonji Masava, Sanja Goma to go, and Nyonju said that the Chimacho and Tosan Comsom Chene, Nyonju said, D Tone, and a Shella Yang, and D Tone, Nyonju said again, come to Tibacone, Lamte, set up chat. And a shitty vetina Rangia, Nyamsulanata, Nyonji the shitty Mabambala, Sanja Goma to Greens and to Twekora Yomarwa. And did to Lamla Labne, and they can get Chanju same with Tobu Yungutwa. Sadon Sever, sing it our shower in what that chick to Nomo, because I didn't do as a Nomoja Maimbe, Mishibe shit, because I did shitty Jesus Rabita, Chichen send it in there. That's our one about Chibata Mabasuna, and Nimachibuya, you know, static Chanjuga sing the top we won't take it. What is the way I said? What did it?
And so this verse here is saying that though this the sentient being may be beyond or not have the obscured, the elusive obscurations, but still is kind of blurred or have this kind of, as I said, misty ignorance with regard to the obscurations to omniscience. And that it is through the mind of enlightenment that these particular obscurations, this blurredness, this misty ignorance is completely uprooted. And it's really pointing out in terms of these two semi-verses how the mind of enlightenment is essential for eradicating all obscurations on the path. And that here, you know, the kind of understanding of the through being motivated by the mind of enlightenment, we can overcome the delusive obscurations to accumulate the wisdom associated with listening, contemplation, and meditation. Get to the heart of the issue and overcome the elusive obscurations, then and dealing with the imprints of those kind of like again to uproot the obscurations towards omniscience, because without doing this we can't attain that state of enlightenment. We need to deal with both sets of obscurations, and it's saying here that powered by, motivated by, and practicing by the mind of enlightenment is the sole means of being able to do this.
Di onge any share with draw the chin. And because of the Taka Sanje Kuma Tobeke, Lam Chita Washido, Shiba Chene, and 년지다 세제지바 니가 아니 방다가 람라 죄야 자주가 생각도 요야 아니 대랑게 탑에 람디니 아니 셰라 감다 tumbe토네 아니 그서데 년지다 세제니 아니 저거 방에 방발 방배 냠내 지단 거 셰라야 아니 그서다 다 지다와셔도 감다 tumbe토네 람데에 대해 되니까 자주가 생각도 요요레스 아니 두투에 좀 요레스 어디서 뭐였어 어디 때도 되더라 어디 뭐다 어디죠
So this then the process is generating the mind of enlightenment and it's a fully powered mind of enlightenment and combining that with the wisdom that overcomes ignorance, that we can proceed along the path that is kind of like, as it were, informed by both our practice of the mind of enlightenment and together with the wisdom to get beyond the hearer, solitary realizer kind of motivations and goals to attain the state of enlightenment itself. And from that point then, the objective is focusing on all sentient beings and knowing at this stage the motivations, the dispositions, personalities, etc. of all sentient beings and leading them in order to overcome the double set of obscurations as we have done in order to attain that state of enlightenment. In other words, to tread the path that we have trodden and to overcome the delusive obscurations and the obscurations to enlightenment.
다 수마 펜데 타다 좀 받들라. 다 펜바다 대화 타다 좀 넣다. 펜바 타다 좀 넣다. 대화 타다 좀 넣어. 오자 다음번에 펜바 타다 좀 넣어 자발래. 담주 오마 수발래. 마게 뉴고 중화인스.
And the third outline is the capacity to establish all benefit and happiness. This is two subsections. The capacity to establish all benefit and the capacity to establish all happiness. And with regard to the first, verse number 32, the second half of it says, it is the quintessential butter from the churning of the milk of Dharma.
콜로 당보 콜로 바바 콜로 타마스 타간제 저 콜로 르바송 그 거에 아니 지금 왔다다 저거 타야 봐서 거요 왔다 거야 되게 그가 다 그래 다 어딘데 저 가서래 거야 되거든 가서도 왔다 간제 저 그래 다 간제 저땀 근데 이제 산지가 송라 되게 그가 무엇을 주네 아니 탐지 좀 도배체도 쓰고 요바 인상 그봐 다 지금 택바 최종의 슝근레스 때바 얘네 아니 저 가서데 마마티 탐지 좀 도배체도 이바 인상 다다 탐지 좀 도배가 유 라나메바데 가데서는 자주가 셈을 와 다들 이제 산지가 송라 그게 다 니고 잡아데 자주가 셈 자태도 와 왔다 그저 마 오마망부 뒤내다 오마 시에네 오마게 오마다 색제네 아니 디 니고 잡아도 마들 와 왔다 디나시가 산지가 송라 용조기 아니 니고 잡아도 다 가제 자주가 셈 자태도 그래서는 자주 산지 주다 가서다 푸드 중화데 다 자주가 셈 와. 자주가 셈 마스나 산지 주체가 요 말이. 다 된사 된데 임바 인사 다 저거 무엇을 유네 다 간제 저거 가서래 다 간제 저 산지에 귤마도 그지 매되고요. 다 산지 가서 산지 수납라. 다 된데 임바 인사 된데 임바자 셈제바 되네 편바 타다 좀 미바 데스 편바 타다 좀 미고 그래서 그래서 다 산지가 수납 타다게다 니고 잡들렸어. 산지가 수납 담주 오메 자주 셰랍지 수셔 다디 문내장에게 셰랍기 아니 저 가서다 제바 이나 아 수발할 때는 니고 잡들 가려서나 저 되네 아니 자주가 셈데 니고 임비치로 셔보자 마기 니쿠 총아 임베시스 다 베나 오마기 수발할 때는 아마 셰크 제발할 때는 다 타마 니쿠도 마디 용구와 어디는 제 사제 송라고 딱까지 니쿠도 딱까지 자주 셈도 차대 어렸어.
And so here this verse is discussing really that all of the Buddha's teachings, be it the first turning of the wheel, the second turning of the wheel, or the third turning of the wheel, all three turnings of the wheel of Dharma by the Buddha were related to either developing, generating directly or indirectly benefit, which is greater or lesser depending on how individuals assimilated those teachings and thereafter integrated them. And so it's kind of really see that obviously the objective from the Buddhist point of view is to present a path to attain that state of omniscience, the state of enlightenment itself, and pointing out that the mind of enlightenment itself was like the essence of progress on that path, and that here, discussing how to generate the causes of that mind of enlightenment, and then therefore the kind of essence of all the teachings of the Buddha, directly or indirectly, is related to the mind of enlightenment itself. That this is the source from which all benefit ensues, and the beautiful image of the churning of the ocean of milk of the Buddha's Dharma, the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma by the churning stick of wisdom, producing the butter, which is the essence, which is the mind of enlightenment.
What did it say? What did it say? 다가제 산제게 추크레 스테바이네 다가제 미유조디 두자 가서다 시신이베 직발에 대치도 되고요. 이나야 내가디 아니 가서다 내가가 가서다 저거 컵도 무엇을 가라 제만에는 균에 아니 딜바도 마치 빠른 야랑 무엇을 야랑을 남때바 연구 열때 이내 심정 야랑 남때에 산제 고마 토베게 팀게 소로 째네. 딩게라 조소와 가서다 가서다 다가제 가서다 단다데 가서 아니 저 가서다 가서다 아니 가서다 다 내가 예수소에 소로 째네. 예수소에 소로 째네. 왔다 아니 저거 데레서 딱 저도 다 이제 타도 밥사때 되게 그가 산제가 남주에 쳐도 다 템게 소로 쳐 가서라 스텝스를 왔다 템게 소로 째네. 차대요. 다 진짜 다 아니 산제가 고마 토발라 다 자주 쌤데 다 시대로 왔다 진짜 왔다 어디 제가 다 산제가 소라 용속에 다 같이 저 마게 니고 잡을 다 그냥 자주가 쌤 차대도 자주가 쌤 아니 산제가 때봐 용해 되다 알아도 산계게 쌤제 돌아 로아베나 산계데 추구가 남발 산계 추구 뭐라 산계도 그다 추구 건도 제도 산계고다 이네 수구 마대 마이나 추구가 쌤제가 되는 수구 때 고라 쌤제가 되더라 대 자주가 쌤부터 그래도 자주가 쌤부터 그래도 좋아 좋아다 다가네 저 수구 때 마이나 빼나 다저 수구라 롱고도 두고니도 롱고치도 아니 가서 되자리자 순간을 펜토 두고 요 말이야. 롱고지도 장사 파바솔면도 사토벌을 내면 장사 파바솔면도 펜토 두고 매번 인사. 아니 다들 두고 넘버 때네. 두고 넘버 때만 이제 숨자라 년도 란게 택바치 뭐 숨자라 펜토 두고 있어. 다들 소미유다데 산제 고마 토베 제대로 때 그에데 자주성 온 거래도 와. 어때더라. 되네 이마이자 산제 그 쪽에 니보다데 다 자주가 셈디스 인생은 어때더라. 근데 내 인사당 가라도 그 장주가 쓰고 냥나 제바이나 산지가 추게 니보디 냥내 제바 차르고 와. 어디 개체 못 가서 차르고 다들.
And so indeed to when we look at the path and the objective of attaining enlightenment, and the Dharma that leads to that, this course has the objectives of making sure that we avoid just the temporary attainments of liberation or the avoidance of cyclic existence, and to attain the state of enlightenment itself. And so this kind of looking at the paths of the hearer practitioners and the solitary realizers practitioners as a temporary stay, as it pointed out in an area verse, like the sheltering tree to take a break. But then ultimately they have to join the Mahayana vehicle and to generate the mind of enlightenment in order to attain the state of enlightenment. So it's really pointing out again that when we talk about churning the ocean of milk of Dharma to get the butter, the essential butter, we're talking about then that as the mind of enlightenment. That is the essence of the Buddha's teachings. And indeed, when it comes to the attainment of the four bodies of a Buddha and their form bodies and the wisdom bodies, we talk about the wisdom body of the Buddha and the kind of like the enjoyment body of the Buddha. These are states of a being where we have no access to, that the enjoyment body of the Buddha can only be accessed by high-level bodhisattvas, Arya bodhisattvas from teachings and so on. And so it's kind of like saying that then the form bodies of the Buddha in terms of the emanation body, etc., that this body is established from the merit accumulated through our generation of the mind of enlightenment and practice according to that mind of enlightenment. And so it's saying here that then when we have the objective of the mind of enlightenment to be of benefit to all sentient beings, it produces the kind of result that does just that. The emanation body from towards whom all practitioner, be they hearer, solitary realizer, or Mahayana vehicle practitioners, can all avail of the teachings coming from an emanation body Buddha, which is established, the causal process is established by the mind of enlightenment. So again, we see how the mind of enlightenment is the kind of essence of the path from the beginning, in during the path, and indeed in forming the final goal. So that mind of enlightenment is to know that the mind of enlightenment is the very essence of the Buddhist teachings.
Siba koye digi inata, takanishi takaso de sishi nigegi digi, takanishi de tamje kime digi yongzo digi deta, dewa tada chubnibani zawale, doyo chubu sibe lamjushe, dewe longju cheba dobala, deni dewe chodo, nyene de simje chuje siba cheba yes.
The second of the subheadings there is the ability to establish complete and utter happiness, all happiness. And so it's pointing in again that for happiness, that it is the mind of enlightenment that can produce this. Whether it's happiness within cyclic existence, the happiness of liberation, or the ultimate happiness of enlightenment itself. And verse number 33 reads, "For all those guests traveling on the path of conditioned existence, who wish to experience the bounties of happiness, this will satisfy them with joy and actually place them in supreme bliss."
Sibakoya lamdi tushin. That 10 get dewe longju, that tedo, that gazati 지금 가서다 내나자 매발라 소베다 되게 롱주 달라 소바다 되게 롱주라 제바 되발라 셈제바 테네 대화 주베 탑초도 좋아 셈제바 테네 다 대화 주베 탑초도 셈제바 테네 대화 주베 탑초도 냐완네 대해서 셈제게 된 셈제 제 드레치 뭐 시바 제바 인스 오다가자 셈제네 다가자 지금 셈제온도 랑게 로티 아니 가서도 구양도 두고를 다 자체도 좋아될 때는 아니 저 가서다 강에라 동련체 투에다 뭐 부정도 또 다 된데 이마 인사 로아베는 그래 다 된데 다 가자 저 동해 중원도 로자 충조이나 아 동해 숙차요 로자체 보이나 아니 동해 숙충아 용티가 요라 다 되가 어디 저기 셈게 맞게 쳐봐도네 아니 동해 숙체 조지 용티가 요래 아니 저 다가는 셈게 발라 때네 동해데 최드베 튕겨를 그때 동해지 좋아하는 동해데 최드베 튕겨를 배주 땅데도 아니 저기 가서도 이침마다 아니 저기 근데 저 가서도 다 간자 동해 때도 매바 차주에 안 단데 내가 비네 아니 동해게 나는 미스바 시도 모양이야 다들 개발자 셈 개발될 때는 용되게도 아니 어들래 대외 롱주 제바 되발라 셈 개발되는 대화 주베 탑 초도의 냐완네 대해서 아니 셈쟁게 전체 뭐 스벌 제바인 셔보고 싶어
So here's talking about those who are wandering in cyclic existence as guests in the state of, as it says, conditioned existence or cyclic existence, and that even then it's kind of like the mind of enlightenment is the kind of the basis on which they can experience any temporary or ultimate happiness in that state, and it is the supreme or best means of being able to establish happiness or to actually keep in place beings in happiness and keep them satisfied. So as very satisfied guests even in cyclic existence. So I was saying, speaking to the vastness of that mind of enlightenment, kind of the how much that mind of enlightenment can take in, and the kind of breadth of that mind itself. It's open, it's vast. In other words, that problems that arise, as they inevitably do, are accepted by the mind of enlightenment. That they are unlike a small-minded attitude, which can be overcome by problems and suffering, but rather here with the big mind of the mind of enlightenment, they can really not just deal with suffering that arises, but to view that suffering as a conducive condition for being able to engage in spiritual practice. And this really really cultivates a sense of tremendous satisfaction and well-being in that being. And so this is what's being referred to here. The kind of fluid, the flexibility, the openness, and the vastness of that attitude that is cultivated through the mind of enlightenment.
강에 그저 제바이네 장주가 생겨 또게 아니 강에디 최주베 튕겨를 배주다는 소사들 디바 장주에 아니 디군에 장내게 디 저도 아니 셈 지금 룰라 강에 주네 셈디 파펴보 가네 아니 셈디가 다 되다 주송 전부 주송 살 때까지 장주가 생겨 또 용되기도 와 아니 딜라테네 아니 내가 현재가 소소 내가 소소 동에 좋아하는 바이네 동에디 아니 당도 렌토에 용게 동에 딜라테네 아 현재라 내가 계가 삼로마 같이 장주가 생겨 온게 딜라 내가 계가 삼로마 용게 아니 디 파르차샤바나 소소로 동해지 중앙에 강에 쳐봐이나 강에 쳐봐디 아니 대가소래 디 강에 쳐 죽은 게 아니 렉이 막 가서 녀토라 미바쇼 스드 아니 지금 무트의 동해에 주먹 보지 가줘야 아니 딜라 때는 소는 거소 납쳐 사줘야 로다 어디네 안 당한 이제 디랑심에 봤다 가서도 구조 장주가 쓴다 아니 돈다선제 니가 냠네 제도 아니 디 또게 셈제 되니고 또게 아니 저가서도 뭐 손으로 이시고 소 아니 버저 가서 다다 뉴도 조조에 보다 되게 샘게 딜라되는 용어들도 샘게 딜라되는 딱 이제 샘게 대 냠내 맞은 거잖아 아니 동해 중 강에 채워도 아니 무트의 동해 유튜브에 내가 레이네 안 샘부스도 못 차이 안 딜라되는다 지 강에 막못 채대죠 연구도 왔다 베나 수사이드 라서 봤다 아니 되게 지가서다 베나 론리 타버던데 그때 용어대 강가지 가르쳐는 연구 열었으나 아니 지금 샘 자체 보면 맞아 샘 자충종이 맞아 들렸다는 용도다 다 장주가 샘 경어대 샘 자체 보러 와 샘 자체 보이는데 아니 랑려다 현재벌스 시도 아니 다 강의 용사 고매 되는 거와 다 강의 용사 강가서 랑제벌스 현예월 도할 때는 용어되게 열와 안디자 그 사이콜로직 톤에 깨지 셔봐이나 생각을 배 톤에 깨지 셔봐이나 와다 디면도 조사 매되게 강에 세라 탑니바 매되겠지.
So when problems are encountered, the mind of enlightenment sees them as an opportunity for spiritual practice and in being able to either engage in both the purification of negativity and the accumulation of positive merit. And so it's kind of saying really the kind of such a transformation, like really attitude, to see the kind of the radicalness of this mind of enlightenment opposed to the usual idea of where we see problems as, so we identify so strongly with them that they create more issues for us. And that, so it's kind of like really, the mind of enlightenment is really a sense of great responsibility on the one hand, and the other one is able to see the opportunity for the accumulation of great merit. And that, and this is kind of like both in both applying as well through motivation, both the conventional and ultimate sense of the mind of enlightenment, that we can develop both the accumulation of merit and wisdom. This is very, very important. And if not, if we can't apply the mind of enlightenment in this way, then it's very obvious to us that the problems that we encounter often become worse. We kind of have something or someone to blame, and they can lead to depression, suicide, loneliness, and so on. And so it's kind of seeing here that we have to see that the looking at the world and our problems through the lens of the mind of enlightenment is like essential positive psychology, and the only means of being able to deal skillfully with the inevitable problems and sufferings that arise in the world. And so here, and it begins, doesn't it, with the mind of enlightenment at its heart is really exchanging the emphasis on self and the ignoring of others for the emphasis on others and the reducing of the sickening obsession with self. And so this is at the heart of what the mind of enlightenment is about. And it is then through the, even from a positive psychological point of view, the mind of enlightenment is quite essential in order to eradicate problems and reduce their impact on us.
가서 딩켜와지 요 말이야. 다 랑게 레뇽기 온게 레도 녀모 온게 겨와레네 안데 규리로 가서 되게 맹여와 요 말이야. 되네요. 거샤는 좋으래. 다 두부도 찍어 두부스는다. 그러던 거저 출로를 베레 참자를 지치바이는 코텐도 돼요 말 술로 소간에 요는 데로도 다 된다시 왔다 토스전에 원남에 봐도 왔다 뭐도 되지 땡겨와지 매되게 아니 대화이네 이대 매되죠. 다 망제다 다 대화 예대가 상제 대화 전자래 대야 이대 매되죠. Rota kaja watele chig ani yichimba medige chigjona yangi yichimba medige ta kaja ta de yinsa ani chig janju ga sem ga de ani kaso una rangi ani pe chikaso de chig sanje gomatuna tenkewa ge nechi ngetuye desa mase ani dewa ta ani chig digi de pe yichimne de tuye ta diga nga digi yichimne ta kaja chig 이쯤에다 오다 가서라다 대화들 이쯤에 대표 가서 장주가 생각도 못 용거렸어. 장주가 생각도 못 용거렸어. 가야 용거 말했어. 어떨래? 어디래?
So we reach the kind of conclusion that it's only through living according to the mind of enlightenment motivation that we can produce a real sense of mental satisfaction, and nothing else can reproduce that. So it's kind of like here, we have to accept that we're in cyclic existence. We are proceeding mostly led by karma and the afflictive emotions. The inevitable suffering arises, and it behoves us to have a kind of the best possible means of being able to deal with a lot of these situations that we find ourselves in. Like we're wandering, as I said, we're guests in this cyclic existence. We're wandering in this suffering realm, and it's something that is completely unreliable, undependable, from the peak of cyclic existence down to the hell without respite. There's nothing definite within it, and so it's kind of like built in that there's kind of this mental dissatisfaction with what's available in cyclic existence. And so this is mind of enlightenment. The mind of enlightenment and the practice of the mind of enlightenment, the generation of that, the integration of that into all we say and do, is very essentially kind of the supreme antidote we're talking about here. That which leads to a genuine satisfaction, a genuine happiness, a genuine sense of well-being. All of this arises and is sustained by the mind of enlightenment, and nothing else will be able to produce that.
루아다 페나가 지기 가서도 페나 지 가서도 세바이네다 지바이네다 수지미네다 아니 다가네 생기다 가서도 가서도 다 간자 지 되게 건가 되게 전에 시라비라 되게 파전 두개 냠내 지에 된가 장주가 셈게 또게 연구도 와 장주가 셈 되네 지 매바 이나 디 냠내 걸어 용해 걸어요 말이 다 장주가 셈 뒤에 또게 아니 셔바 냠내데 지에게 아니 가서도 다 가서도 시대의 중요도 와 아니 디토알 때네 딜라 때네 아니 가서도 다 이제 가서도 산제 고마게 튕게 용소데 줍두고도 와 줍두고도 와 다데 줍두고도 와 어때데 다데 이바자 땡케와 이데 여바게다 디키치 거기요나 다 자주가 셈 고발레 셴지 요마리 세드레다 데레
And so that looking at the different practices of patience, of generosity, of ethics, meditative concentration, wisdom, and so on, that when we talk about those kind of practices, it's essential that they are engaged in through the motivation of the mind of enlightenment. Without that, there's no genuine practice of these different practices. And so it's kind of saying that, based on this, that the entire kind of framework of the Buddha's teachings are based on the generation of the mind of enlightenment. And because all Buddha's qualities ensue from the actions done motivated by the mind of enlightenment.
다 니바 셴 가와케와 니바 셴 가와케도 슈바니서 자왈레스 세다 자왈레 다제들이 껴바 탐제제 쟁을 도와 대신 니다니 봐도 될라 전도 배선제 하다 하면서 가와키죠.
The second outline that may happiness for others be generated. And from the root text, the final verse of this chapter says, "Today, in the presence of all the protectors, I invite the world to be guests at a festival of temporary and ultimate delight. May gods, anti-gods, and all be joyful."
다 다게서 다 소소를 다 자주가 셈게 패딩게 톤에 아니 자주가 셈게네 아니 다게 드린다 다 자주가 셈게 님은 드리네 손데 다 드리네 아니 줘봐 다 줘발라나 봐 아니 줘와 세다 줘봐 탐제게 제가 뒤 뒤내서 다 뒤방부샤네 줘와 탐제라 아니 줘와 탐제 아니 대화 셔봐 니다네 대화 셔봐니다 대마토게보다 다 대화 셔봐티 고마 마토게 봐도 그러다 마토보다 아니 다 봐도 알함이 대화라 론치베 저도 배웠다 마도 다 하다미 이에서 대화 컨디션 티 론치베 저도 배웠어 다 소수 그 레다 가지고 대화 컨디션 다 하다미 대화를 론치베 저도 표현기스다 그러도 가서도 되베 대화 컨디션이나 대화티 안 저도 표현 있어 그러다 근데 미 코란 대화 컨디션 고비베 하이나 하이 코란 대화 그 론치다 되게는 디체다 저도 다 소소 게스트 표현 있어 표현지 된 진짜 다 단에서도 하다 하면 라서는 저와 탐제 가와기시스다 가와기스 저와당에 저와다 가자제 다 가자 다 너가 자원이네 계기면 아니 얘링게 펜토이스 엔데데 이마 인자다 캐나도 그가 가와기시스와 가와기시 시제보죠.
So he is saying, I, today in presence, I invite the world. This I is the I who has not only seen the benefits of the mind of enlightenment and set out to generate that mind of enlightenment. And I am inviting all of the protectors, the conquerors, and their children, together with all the sentient beings, and all those human beings and celestial beings who have yet to attain the state beyond sorrow, the state of those gone to bliss. I invite you all to partake of happiness, to partake of this bliss, supreme, ultimate delight, as it says here. And so from here, this day onwards, that may gods and anti-gods and all be joyful, as it says here.
다 니발 리위 체셔바라 자주 선배 줘발라 주보아서 자주 선배 용수 송화 시제를 리우데 수바오자.
And so the second main outline from the beginning of this chapter is the explanation of the name of this chapter. It comes from the text known as the entering into the activities of the Bodhisattva, the practices of the Bodhisattva. And this chapter is known as the full acceptance or full commitment to the mind of enlightenment.
세 어디 송고에다 가서라 다들 저 가서래 뒤 가서래 다 간제 저기 가서래 들이가서 에버타이징 지단에시 말에 잘라송에도 뒤 시우지에서 에버타이징 뒤 말에 다들 가려서나 딱 알아서 오늘 다내게 디기 누구도나 다 디기 주 소디 디다스 디레 지다 샤바 디기 주 먹고 요한테 이내야 디 다 디조드레스 디님보드레스 조드레스 다디 라레 마타블라 타면도 다스데 라레 따고도스 딱 어쩌는 거 도와 디레
So the most important takeaway from this chapter is to kind of like saying that we have may the mind of enlightenment that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen increase more and more. and to back that up with many reasonings as have been presented here, and to really see, for all of us who want happiness, that this is the essence of being able to generate that genuine happiness. Not to see it as some sort of advertising slogan, trying to sell something, but more that's on the basis of the reasoning that we have ourselves engaged in. We who want happiness have come to the conclusion that, oh, this is it. This is the means. This is the main means. This is the essence of being able to establish that happiness. And to also know that if we don't practice, it simply remains as paying lip service. So it's kind of like understanding, yes, this is the means towards happiness, but also that I must then dedicate my life in this way. I must practice.
어떻게 안 지단 지금 로좀 야쳐보 제도는 빼면서 야보래 그때 제마도 이네 다 전주소로 된 로체네 아니 되게 다 님부디게 다 하고 받지 하고 배도는 아니 강투도게 아니 쇼게 차체의 저 중앙이나 아니 저 가서도 셈견네 다 간제 다 초가 개도 그대네 켜요 말 산제 조조마 되더니 개가 야 초가 셔바데 셈게게는 구조술라 다제 되버서 들으시 개들의 요래 딱 초가 가리네 켜봐도 이네 뒤에 세다는 초주기와 세다 잡아 아니 뒤에라 빵고 수유 삼삼제네 아니 디 군드네 아니 자주가 셈게 자주 셈스 이제 저 가서데 뭐서 저 가서데 말아서 저 캠보도 로변다 된대잖아 그래서 레고가 마주네 개요 말을 아니 지금 뒤에 세다는 또 두배 온보다 산제다 자주 써봐 탐제 초주 산제 자주 써봐 탐제 마사와 매봐 요 삼사제 엔데군들 아니 초바피 아니 초바피 아니 차세 야라도 멘데다 저 표잖아 아니 자주고 셈게 찌게도 가야냐 말스 소소 삼로 돈에 와다 지금 뒤군들은 아니 지금 셈제가 동에 나출라 삼로단에 아니 닝제 야세트 아니 델라 잡아다 된다고 잡아세도 아니 잡아세도 되네 아니 다 동네 탐제 대화 탐제 때마다 지금에서 탐제자 다 지가 저도 제마도 세보는데 아니 대솔라도스라 소저 되네 세트 초지 대화 세트 저거 다 대다 고마 마도 탐도 토바 지기 삼삼 제네 아니 셈게네 와다 대다 아니 되네 초가 개도 그네 되네 되는잖아 아니 코나서 군대네 소소 자주스면 도말 레인 삼삼 제네 도망문에 톱수 삼삼 제네 아니 엔디니가 다 투도 손에다 간제 저기 일이라 와들으시는 제네 다 간제 저 남신하다 저기 당보다 다 소소게 가소래 된데 저 가소래 다 간제 저 주제기 그래서 다저 배준제는 삼로당 배준 간자서는 아니 거점만 많이 받게도 배준을 때문에 아니 상수고 좀 대충 보라 당보다 그 상수고 가서 내당 벌릭 심다래 이니 좀 제만 뭐 삼로당에 아니 셈데 내봐지 아니 셈데 유로 뭐 보도 대도 받잖아 다 이제 레온도 사제 고만 마도 보도 게 셈데 당기면 삼사제네 야네야도 어쨌든 다 가제 저 먼저 쏟아게 더 마소라지나 아니 쳇딜라 세디 마시 봐도 빨리 잡려도 봐 세디 마시 보더라. 다는 자주 세면 도발래도 산제 고마 마도 봐도. 어떤데잖아. 아니 고노 된데잖아. 빨리 저 어떤데잖아. 딱 간제 강투도 니리라. 배준제나 아니 간삼선에 고 bü다다 슉체다 체다 저거로 다졸 계속 좀 시월하게 더다 납체 쪼주고 더다 제어도 가서 다들 자주고 셈데 아니 가서래 당신 냠제고 관에 삼로단에 당신 냠제 관에 삼로단 전에 란제 저기 고토마네 삼로단 현진 저기 연대 고토마네 삼로단에 아니 진진이 고토전에 아니 가서래 다 간제 현진 저기 개답전에 어디서 공부해야지 말이야 어디서
So, this means that, of course, this requires a concerted and comprehensive approach. That in the context of the Bodhisattva's way of life, it's important for us to study to engage in the study, to read that text, to understand what is involved in the not just the generation of the mind of enlightenment, but the sustaining of that as well, and to kind of like engage in that, like within our own practice, from the morning practice, where we can generate the mind of enlightenment via ritual in front of our altar, and generate that mind of enlightenment, be it our teachers there, our masters there, and make our offerings, prostration, mandala offering, and set up and generate refuge in bodhicitta and so on. Contemplate how sentient beings are suffering, how pervasive that is, how inevitable that is, and to generate that sense of compassion and love for sentient beings. Really feel it at a deep level, and to feel a sort of a sense of oh, wouldn't it be lovely if they could be freed from suffering and the cause of suffering? May they be free from that suffering. I will be the one to do that. So I will take responsibility in that exalted motivation, exalted intention, and then realizing that, oh, I can't really from this position. I must attain the state of enlightenment. I must, reach the state of a Buddhahood to be able to do that perfectly and efficiently. And that's the essence of that, is to generate the mind of enlightenment. And so that's where I begin. I really, again, see the purpose of my generating the mind of enlightenment and being able to, as much as I possibly can, integrate that into all I do during this day. And so in the beginning, this will require lots of effort for us to be able to generate that sense of the essence of the mind of enlightenment, in order that it becomes a kind of like so integrated into all of our actions throughout the day. But after a while, it becomes more and more spontaneous for us, and that we will live within the understanding of suffering, and how then we see that as an opportunity to further that mind of enlightenment. So, and never to give up this mind of enlightenment, to really guarantee ourselves that, to guard against ever kind of forsaking sentient beings in that sense. And so it's kind of very important that we can do that, and that taking this kind of these kind of promises and vows according to the Pratimoksha system is to take them until the end of this life. Taking them according to the Bodhisattva vows means that we take them until we attain the state of enlightenment itself. And so, to look into the rituals and so on, or the ritual is presented by Shantideva, Master Shantideva himself, looking into the faults of cyclic existence, the faults of self-cherishing, the kind of really debilitating faults of self-cherishing on the one hand, and then looking into the benefits of cherishing others, and to make that exchange of self and others, to kind of really do as much as we can all the time to, as it were, to guarantee that we're practicing according to the bodhicitta, or the mind of enlightenment motivation.
What kanche je yane yangdo salva ani semje se da shoga je ke ani ningwon de bale duju ton da sozo duju ton ko de ine ani je ge duju jungdo ani samlo ta ya semje ben sanje chozo ma so de ne jen ani ya ko je kapdo to semje to wa ina ko je dream 가서 누가 많이 뭐 소중으로 누가 많이 뭐 소중 지금 소소 뒤지라니 다들이 가서도 지금 가서도 답변은 가서 권세에서는 아니 지난 권세를 흘려대요 돼 이네 디지털이야 삼로도 스타마이나 아니 지금 소소게 아니 지금 가서도 다들 가서도 지금 잡아다 닌젤라 소바다 다가는 자주가 마케바 관에 권도 폐 되게 제와이나 아니 거기 때도 되게 중요하다 아니 셀라 편바도는 지금 배면 흔들 주베게 아니 유튜브에 소라 차도 아니 거주이네 아니 디 고갑도 마셔봐 제와이나 아니 르베 갈리 쳤다 문나도 자주가 좀 천이 상와지 계획이다 레와 용구로 어떻게
So yes, that to kind of do the best we can, then to again and again bring this kind of reflection to mind in the morning, of course, and when we have time to be able to reflect in this way, even in the course of reciting refuge and bodhicitta prayer, to generate that kind of sense of dedication to the mind of enlightenment, and to never allow the power of our mind of enlightenment to decline, to use time that we have in a holiday or break time to kind of relax, yes, of course, but also perhaps to even use more time to reflect upon love and compassion, to see how we can increase the presence of love and compassion in our lives more and more, and to don't lose that opportunity, but to continue, even though it takes more effort now, but to the point where it can arise spontaneously with little effort.
What did it say? That can teach. That was better. What better was Namju Nimajila Kalata, Mancheg, do some Sagra breakfast, lunch, dinner Sagrua. What I did not show so at the Kadu Shogagia, Semji get 6 Busha Majon, 6 to when a Sanjay Chozoma sort of Sarsum, the Semji young, you want to let Semji and Quadas to a Semji and then do to run Yagalaga Semji. What are the but Semkela do you quiet Marwa? Come to Kado, Semke, and Kazaza, Dilatene, and a Hondo in a Shukchon the Doyeta. And Yomo in a Kukoto Shukchon, the Kabu Kabu, Sem Sandwich, Sem Jella, Kamba to Win, so they come to the Nevake, the Yamdocha Yogo Marwa. And what you shall never care that Yomon care at all, Shukchon the Chon the Doyeta. Because the Jamba Kawaki, when I tell Shanadi Tetu Marwa. What in the Takaji Sosu Kalasai to the Tata Sagu Bandisha, and the same gate there, and Chumaina Shogage in Yago Kondacha and Kondan Yagalaka Chicken. When you then imagine do Suyore. What I can say, Kaina Mena, what in the Shogage, Yago Chicken, Kondachi, and Yagalaka Kevina. And the Kanzam so the and some Shira Tamo with the Rangshu beyond to a Chungurwa. Rangshu beyond to a Chungurwa. And it and so make that would be a and and so I should that and it Bajula mother was Rangshu beyond the Chungurwa. The Gomti Mata when a watch Mazona, you have for your mother. And you have for your mother. What that didn't go to and what in the Chavina and Namshina and the Kasura that when I think it's a judge somebody Chayageta Yorba.
So to really, as it were, plan to throughout the day when we are going to generate this mind of enlightenment, to usually we have 3 meals a day, so we can integrate this conscious generation of the mind of enlightenment prior to those meals. Prior, aside from in the morning when we do our practice where we generate, even very briefly, within the refuge and bodhicitta verse that we can focus on, really the generation of the mind of enlightenment, reflecting a little on what that entails, what that means, etc., and that and then to kind of look into again to very briefly when we're having lunch, when we're having a dinner, and to see too that the more we have this thought in our mind, the less anger will arise, the less instances of anger, less instances of mental affliction, because positive minds and negative minds can't exist in the same mind state. When love is present, hatred can't exist. So it's kind of very important that we see it like that as well, so that everything that we do then, like even the mundane actions of eating, and that we use that as a prompt to generate the mind of enlightenment. Before sleep, another point when we're going through the day, to generate that mind of enlightenment as well. And so we don't need to go to great extensive thinking with regard to this. We can keep it short, but to the point, and eventually then it can arise spontaneously. But it's kind of important to understand that we must habituate to this way of thinking. Without habituating, it won't take hold.
What is it? Narado because Tanane Tadich Machana, Namshina, and Tadichia Kugo, during the social lava, Sunny the social lava Yomar, and during the and the Takaja didn't there, and come to the Kotu Chavayinata, and the Kochig Takaja Narado Samlo in the Chuna, something, and took to what you good. what did it say?
And so to see that, yes, it's possible for us to really do this kind of preparation to set up these patterns of thinking now. It's in our hands now. We cannot tell what is going to be like in the future. That now is the only time we have control. And so it's really necessary for us to do the best we can.
Yeah, and didn't they share some money?
Okay, we'll leave it there today rather than begin a new chapter.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions?
Do you want me to do?
No questions? Okay.
Yeah. What did it take? Kaja was a get you the issue and the tongue was can't do a tongue. Chicaso the Niban needed a Jaju, some scope, and a tony to the shut up scope. And it to quay Jimmy Yana on the summer time, quay Jimmy Yana the country, quay Yansatona, and it took ram call natural summer the Monsieur Monsieur and Nianjong in the younger one. That they shall a couple of any share quiet to the natural summer down to any ninjas in the younger one, Monsieur Ninja the younger one, and it's a quite Nianjong the Shuri catch about it. Nianjong the Namjong Jia Sao in the middle, Nianjong la Tongchu Jia, Nianjong the Shuri catch about Nianjong men, Janju Sem Yong, Ninja Yom, Ninja men, Janju Sem Yom. Is a Nianjong core to get Dutch book on the summer time to get the Ganga. Toss in a one name part of course to get the summer time, and it got so that I can do the good, how to the chapa to jig to make a course with the summer time till Missouri Kenny. And it till a Tadu Duck did to get till a tiring locking on the any watching a Johnson the young digger water. You want to what in the Enjoy this young summer time. And it tell it then a duck and run call to Missouri and share to make now the Missouri Ninja you want to take it one and Ninja Dilla so the turn to Queens, Shempa to Queens, see that Jaju same day tell it young to what Jaju same day tell it to one and the Gaga she did. You didn't matter what part of some time anything when I turn a group to you about it. I think what because of the share you do, Ningy share you did, and droop to a year the Metatango. What the Yahoo saw some money. The Yahoo that did droop to a doom, that droop to a year with the Garrel Daggersna, the Tena join by Insa, the Guyela Tena Yongu by Insa, some Tatu, and Casa rushing about what they never knew to rushing about by Insa, and it Chachel attended to what is, and it Chachel to get the Dubayina, and it did to go about the Yavajan, and it did to go Tinchibachi. But touch over the top to what the Yavajan to do. And it did any peasant to good one. The good Nangash which had one, Nangash which had what are they get the Nianjong Jansa Yanta Tawa to shop Mangun as some time to get the Yabun Yabanya to be chicky, and it did any charge was the 20 to be shared the count to come to it. Yamlin Judge knew what to do about it. And the got to show the judge some got to in the knew what the Manyamba jet and got you in the Tesulage. Right, get that due to some like the show, you go on that lady, but Tesulage society, you want Manyamba jet. Was most of the what to do a meza was that the did talk about Yama is a good Pedro Tengu is a Pedro the Pie to call him ever chat with one. You were taking to attend the Codu in a Pedro and Niba Manya Bachata and Sugar and you go on that some time and then Yaga some star in and Sugar Yala the some time and it was a little could Niba to the Manya Bacheva in and you won't get cook up shining good one. What did you say to Shuba? Well, what did they say?
So again, the most important thing is to really genuinely do our best. And, this means that we pay sufficient attention to the generation of the mind of enlightenment and to familiarizing ourselves with the wisdom of emptiness as much as we possibly can. And this is kind of like the essence of the practice. But also we must be aware of where we're at. We're in the reality known as cyclic existence. So here we need to kind of look at the faults of cyclic existence to find that this suffering is, for even my own opinion, unbearable, and I want to get away from that. This course we're talking about renunciation, a very important foundational practice for us, and now never to discount the importance of renunciation, but to really place the proper attention and focus on generating genuine renunciation, because it's from renunciation that compassion arises, and it's from compassion that the mind of enlightenment itself arises. So it's a quintessential factor on the path, and that means that we really start to get to know our reality as well as we possibly can, and that this means we see the suffering of cyclic existence, the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, the pervasive suffering in particular, and to see that what we are living in is in the nature of suffering, that even if we aren't experiencing anything right now, we know that the pervasive suffering will induce the suffering of suffering and the suffering of change. So there's a certain sense of a disillusionment that's necessary in anything that cyclic existence has to offer, because we know that it is always changing into suffering, that it is inevitable. And so we have to develop this sense of wanting to get out of cyclic existence and to attain liberation from cyclic existence. And it's this sense of definite emergence from cyclic existence that is establishing a genuine renunciation. And so this kind of some really kind of fully fledged understanding of suffering and how it relates to me, myself. And it's only by being able to understand that then when I turn that mirror onto all other sentient beings, I see how all other sentient beings are in a similar situation. And that's compassion. So suffering is the compassion is the reverse side of renunciation. And so we kind of on the basis of that, then we can develop compassion, wanting to relieve all sentient beings from all suffering and its causes, leading to the mind of enlightenment itself. And so very, very important with regard to all of that. And that then to understand that the wisdom realizing emptiness as well is showing us that nothing relies independently, that everything arises independence, that there is no sense of anything that can exist objectively, but rather everything is existence independent upon cause and condition, or its parts are merely by being imputed by thought. And so here, so that this is kind of a negation of one way of existing, but rather more importantly, it is an affirmation of the way everything is possible because of this, because of the lack of independent existence, that everything can happen dependently. And so this is a very, very important kind of understanding, a twin understanding, that the necessity of attaining enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings comes alongside the wisdom realizing emptiness. And so very, very important that this is seen as kind of the twin essence of the practice. And so here then it's in the morning to be able to allow, to first of all establish this kind of thinking, this kind of recognition of what is essential, not to degenerate in any way. And again, this formation of the habitual tendency of generating these kind of minds, this kind of thinking, throughout the day, be it the meal times and again in the evening before sleep, is all about allowing, first of all, that sort of thinking, the commitment we have to enlightenment for the benefit of all, and the recognition of the importance of wisdom, realizing emptiness within that, as something so important that we don't dare allow it to degenerate. And also, we can see that along with that comes a reduction in the instance of mental affliction and the effect of mental affliction in our lives. And so to recognize that that is a very beneficial thing as well. And so therefore, you know, that to increase, once we don't allow any of these mindsets to degenerate, we give them the freedom to increase as part of our everyday thinking, or moment-to-moment thinking, and also never, in so doing, they don't ever give the opportunity for mental affliction to arise.
아니 되네 주주주도 아니 동네가 미과 종 채워다 샘께 아니 동네가 미과 종 이마이나 아니 저거 남래도 비다고 종거와 어떻게.
So then to kind of like insert then the practices like taking and giving practices to sustain that sort of way of thinking in our lives, is to kind of really help to make us a very, very kind of effective practitioner.
어들 다 되게 랑게 되려 세드베 라마 투베 옹부티 예서 랑게 치월라 다 되게 년종의 장세 양답에 담로 삼로탄의 년종의 삼로티 셈 년종의 삼로스타 anything 예베 로티 아니 랑게 치워 제 빼마다마 제와지 교소 삼사체 전에 돈이 도베 셔라고 로 삼로타 아니 유대나 조바다 뺐다 가져 뒤삼 요마스 애톰 레바코라 요마스 답에 뒤삼 요마스 어들 저 공부하시는 때 가서는 매번 좀 생각하시는 때내 종아리 또 때내 종아 유대는 뚝뚝 말했다 그좀 생각이 비해 삼다데 거기 다 그저 가서도 시기는 식대 두면 식 네가 대마도 보죠 유대는 두바 이바이나 때내 종다면 때내 종안에 유대는 두다면 해봐지 딱 그냥 가서래 딱 같이 지금 뭔가 인데도 아니 때내 딜 때내 딱 같이 유대는 두바 뒤서면 매바도 커다 쳐봐서 서로다 되게 예별로디 아니 님의 여기 지원 님의 kinh 거지 교수 서서 때는 심지어 탐색도 사제 고만 마땅 토바 지기 용원이도 토바 지기 슬로지게 되게 좀바디 아니 다외 kinh 거도 저는 빠져서 라마를 먼저 다게 조업을 그래 구수도 요구를 짜도서 되서도 잖아 아니 동게 라마 투배 공부대 아니 그거 왜 남발을 젠잖아 랑이 지고라 내소서 담에 가서 니베 가서 수배가 때도 사제 고만 마땅 제 수수 손을 가고.
So so then in conclusion, to establish the necessary lotus sun and moon disk mandala seat on our crown for the invitation of the Guru deity onto our crown, we, through contemplating renunciation, establish the lotus seat mandala, and then to look at how everything arises in dependence, can have no sense of independence of or objective or inherent existence, to see how that is the case, and really at the point of the mere negation of the object of negation, we establish the sun disk mandala representing that. Again, through understanding how dependence verifies how all can be established in terms of causes and conditions, we know that we again can aim for the attainment of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, and generate that.
Hello? No, the guys.
First recitation, begin the journey across to our crown at the end of the second, to be seated on our pre-prepared seat, and at the end of the third, to be able to remain there until we attain the state of enlightenment.
이런 거는 문제가 니한테야 미스 오다가지 야라도 멘데다 치마 피네 아니 랑이 다 되네다 랑이 닝데 빼마 답제질라 주 아니 되네 가서데 니마 다베데 다 되는 신경 주쳐서 양답에 따고 수고 최대체 안테나 받으서 넘을 때 닝거 비도 그 구조도 그 최대체 답에 가서 집에 가서 수고 때문에 산제 고 마도 거기 제 송수 스스로도 공부시.
And then we make the offering of the 7 limb prayers and the mandala, and again to establish the lotus, sun, and moon disk at our heart center and prepare those seats for the invitation of the Guru deity from our crown. O glorious and precious Root Guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed here at my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first recitation, the figure moves from the crown chakra down through the central channel. At the end of the second, arrives at our pre-prepared seat. And at the end of the third, is established there until we attain the state of enlightenment. We can again rejoice in this fact.
닝게 내단의 신 이제 파냐 인디가도 도지가 장가 체가지 가게 아니 타고도 아니 가서도 되베창가 다에도 없는 몸서 다에도 없는 다에도 없는 되베창가 어디 저 거는 것이지 되네 가서도 자매한게 아니 송아 오마르바사다디 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 이 송고 나저 송고 봐 지구 거래자 되네 난고라 얘네가 오면 얘다마 해도 그러는 거 너무 아샤만에 소들이 이게 그 나한테 송고 되게 좋대 아니 되네 닝게 요소 라바투베 오버슈와데 구송토라 외사 빠도나 라게 치고네 강디가 발로 외사 쳐발았다는 토마메발 디바데 디바데 캬바도야 안다까지 지금 가서라 다가제 저거 미케 주본 거다 소저바 마저바 미사저 주인타마 초정가제 나선도스 로달라서 봐 다간에 신게 지 가서래 제베 하나마도 라제 하나마도 소다가 또 뭐가 자주 쓰면 왔다 거 같아 아니 가서도 상하게 담set다 겨와라 소바 딱까지 네바 걸리지 싸울 최대한 생각만 토마메바 네바 걸려서 대다 타제배 장신 딱바 중수 삼사 워드를 전때는 저기 루긴 다시 초주배 개gen 루긴 나자 셈그 동에 다 중식 거 많이 봐 자롱 티레 그 대다 타제 마 장네 아니 가나 타제 딱바를 저 바시 차도 맞다 뉴도 산제 고마 토발라 아니 탐에게 나생의 교 장부 요반에서 탐에게 나시 교 탐제 장내다 야고 수 중수 삼선데 다고
And then the petals of the lotus fold over, and they are sealed at their tips by 5-pronged white vajra, semi-vajra. And then the leaves and the package within are surrounded by 3 mantras, the mantra of the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha in a clockwise direction, the mantra of Manjushri in an anti-clockwise direction, and the mantra of dependent origination again in a clockwise direction. From within, then light waves begin to emanate from the heart center of the Guru deity, permeating through those petals out through our body and permeating through every atom of body and mind, and purify all the obscurations and negativities we have accumulated since the beginningless time, focusing on the 10 non-virtues of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, of harsh speech, divisive speech, lying, and idle gossip, and of covetousness, malicious intent, and wrong view, purifying all the negativities that we have done in association with vows and commitments taken, be it the Patimoksha vows or the Bodhisattva vows or tantric vows, or any infraction or downfall that has accumulated, may they be purified. All negativities accumulated through self-cherishing and self-grasping, all negativities of that which has been, naturally occurring negativities or actions prescribed by the Buddha. All of these negativities and stains and kind of imprints and so on are completely purified, and so that our 4 elements are brought into kind of a balance again, that the channels, winds, and drops are again purified of all stain and aligned, and that all of that the particularly the kind of like the the ordinary view with which we view everything is transformed, that which kind of stops us from being able to attain enlightenment quickly, is exchanged for a pure view. And I can see that then I'm completely purified of all negativity whatsoever at this stage. And yeah.
So the ship to load the Jilliga, Labashajas and good Hedijic, so the Labashajas and Kula Jusu, so the ship to send the Labashajas to the Hedijic, so the Labashajas to the Jusus, Rangel Lunga, use of the Labashajas of Kusu, or Yemen Jusu, so the tea, the water, the Tomba, the Totonis Marishi, Jasu, so such a Rangel Nessa, Netia, Neg, New Tamjet Chane, Lamashajas, the Tamasha Jusu, so the water of Kumacha.
And then through the combination of my own more subtle wind as acting as the substantial cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of a Buddha. And then through the combination of my own more subtle mind acting as the substantial cause, together with the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of a Buddha. And then I see myself as being, my body, speech, and mind as being inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of an enlightened being. This brings forth a sense of bliss, which combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. And that the place that I am in also is transformed into the enlightened place. It's kind of purified of all fault, and is transformed into the enlightened abode of a Buddha. And so then through the sending out of countless rays of light, equal in number to all sentient beings from my own heart center as an enlightened being, going into all of the 6 realms of existence, and upon touching all sentient beings, they are purified of all fault and spontaneously arise as sentient, as fully enlightened beings. And the places they are in also are kind of purified of all stain and fault, and they are transformed into the enlightened abodes of enlightened beings. And that, I can really rejoice in this today, that today is the day I have been able to attain enlightenment and lead all sentient beings to that state of enlightenment. And that is really something worthy of rejoicing in. So this, these sentient, leading all these sentient beings to the state of enlightenment, the virtue which has affected that attainment, and myself as the agent of that virtue. We all lack any objective existence and are merely imputed by thought. This brings forth a sense of bliss, which combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness again.
And digate when I done it, the day you get twinge, Jaju said the Tony to be shared again, twinge the Joshua, watch it.
So, of course, I know I'm operating at the level of imagination here. It certainly isn't as easy to affect these kinds of goals as this. And so I really make sure that I am going to, dedicate all of this merit so that quickly it may be made actually manifest, and also to be able to use everything I have at my in my power, from the morning till evening, to see all as conducive conditions for practice, whatever happiness arises, whatever suffering arises, that I see it all as simply conducive conditions for furthering, increasing my familiarity with and capacity for the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness. Loi mo san ru kyo do You are Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of compassion, not aimed at true existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Adrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception. Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows, Losing Drakpa, at your feet, I make requests. So again,